A little dog. Two.
Hi, I'm Jane Rudolph.
And I'm Monsignor Charles Minor.
I'm Pat Shelton, and welcome to Reel to Reel.
Here at Reel to Reel, we can welcome a rich heritage in the arts in this area. We have the world-renowned Philadelphia Orchestra, the Pennsylvania Ballet, and not to mention lots of other artistic things we can do.
I think my favorite might be the Rodin Museum on the Parkway. I've always liked it. I've always good times out there. And great to see some real good publicity lately for it. And you, Patricia?
Well, I haven't been to a good museum in some time, but I have some lovely pieces of artwork at home that I can enjoy. And then a little statue by Rodin, the thinker.
There you go.
One of my favorites.
Well, I think before we get into all these areas where we have gone or should have gone, we ought to talk a little bit about the notion of creativity. And we have someone comes out from behind a radio microphone to talk about TV. Wait till you meet our new series, Vintage VCR and Joe O'Neill.
There are so many ways to communicate. We're communicating to you tonight through the television airwaves, but we're going to see a group of wonderful people who communicate with their hands.
And my special guest will be someone from the Delaware Valley who will take us into the world of the deaf and the hearing impaired.
You know, we oftentimes think of the artworks and things all fixed, but the creative talent is something that really stays living in the people, not just on a wall or in a art piece.
It's so true, because when you look at the arts and you see how they are communicated, think of a Philadelphia Orchestra leader. He communicates with his hands. And in ballet, one of the first things you learn to tell the story of Swan Lake are the certain different pantomimes. So isn't it wonderful and isn't it appropriate that young deaf artists learn the graceful and eloquent art of sign language?
5 pink, heart. We have 5 red, cartoon, party.
For a deaf or hearing impaired child, the art of communication is not one easily mastered. Yet through sign language classes like this one, offered through the world-renowned Center on Deafness, these young students will be given the chance to be heard. Located near Chicago, the Center on Deafness has provided a variety of unique resources designed to serve the special needs of the deaf and hearing impaired community since 1973.
In the beginning, when we set up the goals for the center, we decided to try to establish programs that did not exist anywhere in the country. And so we selected 2 main areas, one in mental health and one in the arts. And so our programs have developed in those 2 areas. So right now, currently, we are offering school services for emotionally disturbed children. We have an adult program for individuals who have emotional problems and need some supervision and some work experience learning to become independent. We have then a very large arts program where we have a once-a-year arts festival, and we have a theater program that gives children and adults experience in theater, both with acting themselves, but also in learning how a theater operates and in learning about the scripts and the drama and the literature that belongs in the theater.
Fostering the development of creative talent through theatrical expression remains a major area of focus for the center. These 2 hearing-impaired actors are members of the Traveling Hands Theatrical Troupe, a select group of performers chosen from the Center on Deafness theatrical program. Their presentations feature song, dance, and poetic forms of theatrical expression.
The horrid beast springs into focus, its twisted body advancing towards me, baring its terrifying teeth, its long, twisting arms curling around me and dragging me back to reality.
This place does a lot for the kids.
It teaches them first to be able to perform in front of others, which deaf kids don't get the opportunity to do. But beyond that, it teaches them responsibility, it teaches them poise, the ability to answer questions quickly when they're doing interviews like this, to meet people and not be afraid, to go out and to confront a hearing person and say, hey, I have a lot to offer.
The Center on Deafness has helped me to perform by making it easier for me, by making me feel more confident of myself, making me feel more at ease with myself so that I can go and portray someone else.
Another large part of the Center on Deafness' Creative Arts program is the annual Creative Arts Festival. Deaf or hearing impaired contestants, regardless of age, are invited to submit original works in the areas of painting, drawing, photography, short story, poetry, and talent. Here, the entrants are given the opportunity to achieve outstanding recognition in their field of artistic endeavor.
They don't really understand what the Arts Festival is really all about until they have experienced a weekend here. The thrill of meeting other children from all across the United States who have the same kinds of talent that they have, and comparing talents amongst the children. And then they go home and go, oh my gosh, we've got to do this again, you know. And those children who have entered then enter again and again and again. And what surprisingly happens is they don't just enter in, let's say it was visual arts that they won. They then go try their hand at creative writing, or then they try the performing arts as well, and they succeed in those just as well. And I think it just makes them see that they have a lot more inside of themselves, and they just feel confident to go and try those other things.
Bridging the gap of information regarding the deaf and hearing impaired is another large part of the Center's directive. This unique bookstore serves a special purpose towards that end.
Our bookstore is one of a kind. I believe it is the only one between here, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., where you will find another one. So that was another service that was not available to people who needed books and information about deafness. We carry almost every book that has ever been printed about the subject of hearing loss. And we also have items like wall charts, ABCs, teaching materials, and things like that. We have our own publications that we have done as well, of reading series for young deaf children, and materials on teaching them language, idioms. I myself do a lot of diagnostic testing, and we have some tests that we have developed and published and that are being used across the country in measuring the abilities of deaf children.
The work accomplished by the Center on Deafness has achieved some remarkable results. Perhaps the Center's greatest success story is that of Marlee Matlin, the Academy Award-winning deaf actress and former member of the Traveling Hands theatrical troupe.
The Center gave Marlee the opportunity to act and to bring this talent out. Without that, I don't know any other way that it could have happened. She was given the background. Everyone started together, and everyone learned together. My favorite thing was when she got the part for Children of a Lesser God. Marlee always wanted to perform, and she did. She always performed, on or off stage. But she did everything that she had in her, and the confidence that the people here had in her.
Every day, the Center on Deafness overcomes the challenge of bringing the world to those who live in silence. The foundation for the Center's achievements can be found in the love shared by all who are part of its family.
The entire family is involved in the Center. When I got married, my husband became involved at the Center. My children come with me. It's just a very tight-knit group, and we feel very inspired by what goes on here.
The sign for father, like this, for your dad, comes from tipping the hat. But you know what your sign is?
No?
Guess where that comes from?
Well, I'll tell you right now, we're going to cut you right off at this moment, and you wait till we come right back.
Could this Philadelphian be made a saint of the Catholic Church? The answer may be yes. She's Catherine Drexel, beatified by Pope John Paul II in 1988. Now you can experience her adventurous life story on audio cassette. Get America's Catherine Drexel, The Life of a Saintly Woman. Hear about her life through the voices of the people who actually knew her and continue her work today. The cost of this dramatic audio cassette is only $4.95. To order, call 215-587-3775.
A lot of people will tell you that cocaine not only will get you high, but will take your performance to a different level.
JJ Motoric's not only going hard shit, I'm going lottery. Hey, JJ! I'm JJ, man.
But in this game, the higher you go, the closer you get to the bottom.
What the hell's going on? You guys see JJ?
Police announced that they'd arrested JJ McCormick.
I think you'll agree we've seen a fascinating piece tonight on the deaf and the hearing impaired. Well, we have a guest from the Office of Catholic Disabled Persons in the Diocese of Trenton. With me is Sister Rose Huber, and she's going to share with us some of the services available for the deaf and the hearing impaired in the Diocese of Trenton. Welcome, Sister.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too. And I'd like to know what services are offered for the deaf and hearing impaired in Trenton.
We have many services offered in the Diocese of Trenton. I would like to share, first of all, ministry with the deaf and hearing impaired persons is a very unique one because in the Diocese of Trenton we use sign language. Mm-hmm. And so all of our church services are offered in sign language or they are interpreted by our volunteers.
Offered in sign language by the priests?
In sign language by the priests who have been taught the sign language.
Wonderful. Or they are interpreted.
Right. We have a listing of services, not all the churches,
yes,
only those that are mentioned in our brochure.
Okay, that's a very, very wonderful service. And what are some of the other services available for the deaf?
Well, I'm involved specifically in working with the deaf community. In the Diocese of Trenton, we have the State School for the Deaf, mm-hmm, which is located in West Trenton. And at this school, the students come from all over the state, and I would say 1/2 of those students are Catholic. And so I'm charged with the responsibility to provide religious education with my volunteers to those students who are Catholic and are deaf. So I offer those services in sign language.
And Sister, you are not deaf, are you?
No, I'm not deaf.
But you are very adept at signing.
I have been with the office for 6 years and I have improved my sign language quite a bit. And it's very difficult for me not to be signing right now. That's what I do when I communicate with persons who are deaf.
Well, if you feel like it, just go ahead.
Right.
Now, Sister, you personally offer some pastoral services to the deaf and hearing impaired. Why don't you tell us about those?
Exactly. Because the Diocese of Trenton encompasses 4 counties, the persons that are deaf are located in all throughout those 4 counties. Mm-hmm. And so I might be called upon to visit someone in the hospital. I might be called upon to interpret at a wedding. Mm. Recently, I was at a baptism for a family, a deaf couple, whose baby was baptized. So I provide those services pastorally that a parish priest would provide in any local church, only I do it on a diocesan level.
Oh, that sounds like a very rewarding job.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. do we have any theatrical services available, or are there any unusual services? Any additional unusual services? They all are.
I think at the School for the Deaf they provide multiple services, and they involve the students and integrate them quite a bit. But with the Catholic Diocese, I have begun a unique program this particular fall, and it will be involving adults who are deaf in religious education. And this is a need that those persons themselves have asked for religious classes, and this will be beginning very shortly.
That's wonderful. About how many deaf persons do you serve in the Trenton Diocese?
I think there are about 300 deaf families in the Diocese of Trenton. There may be more. These are the ones that we know about. Most likely there are many more than that.
All right. Is it very difficult to learn to sign?
There are classes offered in the local areas. I think a person, it's just as any language, you have a skill or an ability to do that. I myself, I feel that I have a good memory, and perhaps that's one of the reasons that I can sign so well.
I've always been fascinated with it, and perhaps before I leave this mortal coil, I will learn to do it. I think it's wonderful. I think your services are wonderful, and I'm so glad you came over to tell us what is available for the deaf and hearing impaired in the Diocese of Trenton. My guest has been Sister Rose Huber. And Sister, next up, we are going to see a piece about a beautiful form of art, stained glass windows. I've always been fascinated by the holy beauty of stained glass windows, and tonight we're going to learn how that beautiful art form is created.
I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. A tradition of stained glass artistry has been a part of this family since the mid-19th century, when Martin Callanan helped install the windows in the Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul. His nephew Tim continued the trade, and his son Tom started his own shop in 1958 with his friend Vince Filippone and called it the Oxford Stained Glass Studio.
I worked about 6 months before I became an apprentice. And we started our apprenticeship in 1945. We worked 13 years for the company. I worked 13 years. Vince worked 4 years for someone else and then came and worked the last 8 years with me. And after 13 years, we went out and started our own.
Tom's son Tim and daughter Denise also work in his shop, becoming the fourth generation of Callanans to pursue this family tradition.
Well, we grew up in the trade. As early as I can remember, I've worked with things. Even as far as coming home from school and going into the swap shop and sweeping floors.
For me, I started at the age of 6. That's when I began, and started with my father at the studio, learning how to cut, learning how to glaze or assemble the window. And from there, my apprenticeship went on to this time at 35.
Tom has restored many of the windows in the Basilica, plus the windows in the Cathedral Rectory. Here they created the Last Supper, which sits in the dining room. But their pride and joy is the window on the landing. In it, Jesus holds in his arms Pope John Paul II and Cardinal Kroll, St. John Newman, and Mother Catherine Drexel. The first step in stained glass is to produce a lumiere, which is a small sketch of the window. This sketch is presented to the client for approval before they start to work on the actual drawing.
There's a small lumiere of the rose window. It's Christ in the garden. It will then be blown up, and we have a large-scale drawing to show you that as well.
Once this large sketch or cartoon is completed, they make carbon copies of the drawing by tracing only the actual lid lines, so they know how big each piece of glass will be. Then one of the patterns is cut with double-bladed shears, so that 1/8 of an inch will be taken out to allow for the lid. The pattern pieces are then matched to the other sketch by the numbers.
We cut the patterns and then lay them back out on the cartoon so we know which piece is which, and then we have the lumieres that you see in the color sketch. We can look up at the color sketch and compare it with the drawing and the patterns so we know which color. It's a light blue or dark blue or gray or whatever color. You pick your color, get your glass leave it with it, and then put it on a tray for the cutter to cut it.
We cut the patterns, or we cut the glass to the pattern. We take a steel wheel and we run that cutting edge down along the edge of the pattern, and then we break the score, or the cut that the wheel has done, so that we get the piece of glass the exact size of the pattern that we've used.
These pieces of glass, you can't put them up to the light unless you have them on an easel. In order to do that, we put this plate glass, and with drops of wax that sticks to the glass, it holds our glass on there. Then we can pick it up and put it to the light. Then we can see the light coming through, and then we can paint it. I mat over all the areas that are going to be painted. I put this mat on with the brush. And with the blender, I just blended it to the desired tone that I wanted. And then from that, I start taking lights out. And I start letting light through, and where I left it on, they left the shading on there, so that it gives a little form to it.
After it's painted, put it on another tray, take it to the kiln, put the glass on the kiln, pieces that has to be fired, put it on the kiln, and then you fire it to about 1200 degrees.
When it is taken out of the kiln, it is placed on another bench where it is glazed. Each piece of glass is placed on the sketch 1/8 of an inch apart, allowing for the lead. Glazing is placing the lead strips around the pieces of glass. After the lead is fit, the corners are soldered together. Then it is ready to be cemented or waterproofed. At the waterproofing bench, the cement is scrubbed under the lead pieces to prevent any leakage. And then the lead strips are smoothed down to close the cement around it. A whiting is applied to set in the cement. Now the window is ready for installation.
We install windows in stone, woodwork, brick, concrete, almost anything, steel, aluminum. So we work with all types of material.
Just sorry that it's so hard to get apprentices today. Everybody wants to start at the top, you know. They don't want to start at the bottom and serve a 4-year apprenticeship, but it's a shame because they're losing out on something.
For 4 generations, the Callanans have been placing art in our churches. Who knows, maybe there might be a 5th generation yet to come.
Art in every form always seems to take a lot of time, but isn't it true when it goes into generations, then it becomes truly beautiful?
And we want you to take the time with us tonight on Reel to Reel, so don't go away.
What can you do about AIDS?
Love is what we need. The life that love can bring. Come take my hand and understand the answer is love. Love is what we need. Open up your heart and understand the answer is love.
We welcome your comments and suggestions and encourage you to write us at Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia 19103, or call us during regular business hours at 215-668-9842.
All art is influenced by technology. Now, symphony orchestras are digitally recorded, and even ballet is using the camera in especially class. But we've found now that we can bring art to our own homes thanks to something called a VCR.
But you know, we talk about art and technology. It's so easy to get the attitude so many have that I don't know a lot of the thing about art, but I know what I like. You have to be selective in what you take in art. You have to really be very choosy in what you bring into your home, especially by VCR. So when you start looking for VCRs to bring into your home, you're going to need some advice and some counsel. Well, we have a happy way of bringing it to you. Wait till you see Joe O'Neill tell you how to choose a proper VCR for your house by Vintage VCR.
Hollywood movie called Brother, Sun, Sister Moon brings the story of St. Francis of Assisi into your home on videotape. It's a simple and haunting story of a young man who gets rid of all his material possessions, runs off, and lives the life of a monk. Francis is thought to be crazy, giving up the luxuries of the world to live his life for God. Funny, but that way of thinking sounds vaguely familiar. In this scene from Brother, Sun, Sister Moon, Francis decides to share his newfound happiness with his father. But what he has to say just doesn't sit too well with dear old Dad.
Father! Father! I want to share my joy with you. Our treasures are in heaven, Father, not here on earth. Don't be a slave to these. Throw it all away. Do as I do. It's so simple. Be free.
It's Pietro de Bernardone. Hey now, what is all this commotion? The Bernardone's son, he's gone berserk. Has he only found that out now? Oh, anyway, you'd better let the gods. He's lost his mind. What's the matter with you, Bernardone? You gone mad as well? I want justice. And I want it here. Now. Son of all Assisi. Well, it would be helpful to know the charge.
What has the justice of men to do with me? God is my only judge.
Well, unfortunately, he isn't around to help us out.
Brother, Sun, Sister Moon's most dramatic conflict centers on Francis's inability to understand why God would have things go wrong in his ministry. This man decides simply to go to the Pope personally and ask for wisdom. The climactic meeting between the Holy Father and the future saint is a scene you will long remember. Rent this excellent movie from your family video store. They should carry it. And if they don't, make a strong suggestion. Brother, Sun, Sister Moon is rated PG, and the United States Catholic Conference opinion is that the movie is best suited for adults and adolescents. This is Vintage VCR. I'm Joe O'Neill.
We're out of time, so until next week, please take care.
Goodbye. God bless you.
And thank you for being with us this week on Reel to Reel. Good night.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen, Newtown Square, PA, 215-359-5980.